Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this fourth webinar for Standard Drafters. It's coming to you live from CCMC in Brussels. My name is Matthew Tomlin. I'm the Unit Manager of the Standards Publications Unit here in CCMC. And today I have with me here Cynthia Palagi.
Hi, my name is Cynthia. I've been working for 10 years in CCMC as an editor.
Thank you, Cynthia. So this fourth webinar is covering two topics. Firstly, we'll present to you the new 2016 improvements to the inquiry and formal vote procedure. And then we'll cover a second topic.
Just looking at the triangle. Now it is. Okay.
So sorry about that interruption there. We are having a few technical issues, but my team around me are helping me, so we think those are solved now. So today we'll do the fourth webinar covering two topics. The first topic is the new 2016 improvements to the inquiry and formal vote procedure, and then after that the second topic will be the finalisation stage of European standards, and we'll tell you all that a TC secretary needs to know. The CEN and CENELEC technical boards have approved a variety of improvements to aspects of the inquiry and the formal vote procedure. Now, some of you may be familiar with this infographic that is now up on the screen. This is an infographic that we made here at CCMC in order to provide an overview of these changes. Now, the BT decisions that came into force on the 1st of July 2016 will be explained to you now. However, these changes impact 6 different aspects of the inquiry and formal vote procedure. So please pay attention to each of these changes in order to understand which work items are impacted due to the transition of moving to these changes. So I'm now going to go through these 6 improvements. Firstly, the first modification concerns new work items and the delivery to CCMC of the inquiry drafts. So all new work items registered as of the 1st of July this year, 2016, will have a first delivery of inquiry draft target date within 8 months. So there's a change there. It's been reduced from 12 months to 8 months. That's when the draft for the inquiry has to be delivered to us at CCMC. Now, there are alerts in Projects Online which will help you identify which projects have an upcoming due date for delivery into CCMC. And as usual, no change here, you deliver your drafts via eTrans in CEN, and currently in CENELEC it's via email. If you want more information on this particular aspect, the delivery of drafts to CCMC, please see our first webinar, the recording of which is available on the website. Now, also to note, this 8 months can be extended to 12 months. How that will be done is currently under discussion by the technical boards. We assume that the use of the tolerance will be applied there, but when this has been agreed by the technical boards, you will be informed. Secondly, the change to new work items and the circulation of a first working draft in the TC. So for all new work items registered as of the 1st of July this year, it will be obligatory for at least one working draft to be circulated in the TC within 4 months of adoption, or that's the creation or activation of the work item. Again, to help you identify which projects will be concerned in your work programme as a TC, there will be alerts available for this particular stage in Projects Online. We expect those to be developed and in place during the fourth quarter of this year. The third change concerns the submission of the formal vote draft to CCMC. That's the submission of the draft text for formal vote. Now, this only concerns CEN technical bodies. As of the 1st of July this year, for all existing work items in the work programmes of technical bodies in CEN, and the submission of the draft to CCMC for formal vote will no longer require a specific technical committee decision. Instead, this can be decided by the TC chairperson and the secretary alone. The fourth improvement concerns translation at formal vote stage. So now translation at the formal vote stage takes place actually during the 8-week formal vote and not before the vote. So this means that once CCMC has done the editing, we will launch the formal vote immediately. However, translators are allowed to request translation before the formal vote if they want to. That still is an option for them. And in such cases, the translators have to inform us at CCMC during the inquiry stage. Now, there is a transitional stage for the implementation of this particular change, and it applies to all projects for which the inquiry draft was delivered to CCMC after the 1st of July this year.
Sorry, Matthew, but how will the TC know if the translators have decided to translate before the formal vote stage?
Well, that's a good question. This information will be visible in Projects Online. It will be available in the tab Work Item Plan, so technical bodies will be able to see if the translators have specifically requested a prior translation before the formal vote. And if this occurs, if there is a prior translation, this will be 6 weeks duration. The fifth change regards the duration of the formal vote. That remains 8 weeks, but there is now no longer the possibility of having any extension to the 8 weeks for the formal vote procedure. And finally, the last change for us to communicate to you following the technical board decisions concerns the new approach consultants assessment, and that is now taking place during the formal vote. And that will be for all the formal vote drafts delivered to CCMC as from the 1st of July. For these projects, if they require a consultant's assessment, this assessment will take place during the formal vote and not previous as it was beforehand. As usual, consultants reply then on e-balloting for CEN and via email in CENELEC. So, that concludes the first part of this webinar. I'm now going to hand over Cynthia to the microphone for the second topic, where we will look at the finalisation stage of European standards.
Thank you, Matthew. So we'll start by the closure of the vote and how a publication is triggered. So there are two possibilities. The first one, depending on the outcome of the inquiry, it is now possible to skip formal vote and therefore go directly to publication. The second possibility is if the document went to inquiry, then to formal vote and is positively voted, it can go to publication. This is at that point that CCMC gets involved. It is a kind of service that we offer all our technical body. So the first step is the actual editing of the document. Once the editor has been allocated, the text is finalized and the comments are handled. You can see on the following slide an example of a voting report filled in by the editor in charge of the publication. As you can see, you have green comments and red comments. Obviously, you can guess that the green comments have been applied to the text because they are mainly editorial. For the red comments, it might be that the editor needs a bit of clarification, for instance, in the second row because it's not quite clear. But also, the red comments means that it might be rejected because it is a technical change and we can't do that after the formal vote. See the last row, for instance, you cannot change a recommendation into a requirement at publication stage, so it will be rejected. Once we have finalized the text, we then send it to the TC secretary responsible with all the comments. So you can see on the next slide, it will take 3 weeks for the TC to get the reply. So on the next slide, you can see an example of an email. So we'll send it directly to the TC secretary. They have 3 weeks to proof the document and send a reply to us. You can see the deadline in red in the email. So most of all, what the TC needs to do is have a final look at the text and also reply to all the questions pending from the editor. Just bear in mind again that no technical changes will be allowed at that stage. It's very important. You are also advised to involve the working group convener when proofing.
Thanks, Cynthia. So I see in the example that we've got up here on the screen that you wrote to John about 3 weeks ago and his deadline is today. So can I ask you, has John replied to you yet?
Unfortunately, no. So what we do in CCMC is that we chase up TC. We send them reminders that it is still pending and we need their approval to go further. In the case we receive the approval from the TC, we then launch the translation procedure to ensure the availability of other translation. Then we send the text to DKE, DIN and AFNOR, and they have 4 weeks to provide us with their translation. Once the deadline of translation is reached, then CCMC can publish the documents. So at the DAV date, the members will be able to start implementing their very own version of their standard.
Great. Thanks very much, Cynthia. So I'd just like to end with this slide, and this gives you an idea of when all these steps happen. So we have a weekly schedule in the publications unit for all our activities, and we aim to carry out the different steps on certain days of the week. Now bear in mind these are our targets, and sometimes we might actually do it the day after or even 2 days after. But let's just go through some of the steps that Cynthia's talked about, looking at this example of a weekly schedule. So on Tuesdays, this is our target date for sending publications that we have finalised to the Technical Committee Secretary for the start of the 3-week proofing. This normally happens on Tuesdays. Next, Thursdays. What happens on a Thursday? Well, that is our target date for sending the finalised publications to translation once we've received the confirmation from the TC Secretary after the 3 weeks proofing. Thursday is our usual start date for triggering the translation procedure. Then on Friday, this is the day that we publish in CENELEC. And in CEN, we publish on Wednesday. So, thank you very much.